a little bit about sections or don't do that, then it'll bite up itself. That's your first name again. Tzvi. This battle of 6 hours of filming. This about 6 hours of filming. We've done already 29 minutes already.
Where did you get your board in the States?
Yeah. Right here too.
Which store? Which store did you buy it?
7 years ago.
7 years old, this camera?
Yeah. So it was close $1,000 then.
Well, now today?
Now today, there's
400?
yeah, there's much more stuff. There's much more stuff.
Love you. I love you.
Rachmael, don't see you, man. David, where are you? Time to go.
He has a restaurant. Yeah. They should.
Yeah. No?
Rabbi Nachman.
No? That's what you guys. Hey, you okay?
The Alter Rebbe used to refer to the Baal Shem Tov as the Zayda, that he called my grandfather. Was everything is B'tachlis Adiyuk. If the Alter Rebbe used such a terminology, then the Zicha that had to the fullest possible extent all the Inyanim, what a Zayda implies, like a
Grandfather.
Einikel.
Opa.
And that means that the Alter Rebbe was not only just a Talmud, he wasn't just a bearer of the flag when I get to the terrace of Baal Shem Tov, but he was like a continuation in a form of an embodiment in the way that our son is like an embodiment of the father, and he's a Emshech, a miti from the father. And yet, if we look at the approach of the Alter Rebbe, then we find it's rather different in style. Everything in the way the Alter Rebbe approached the world is considerably different than what we find by the Baal Shem Tov. So the meaning in that is that there's a famous quip. Well, it's more than a quip. It's how to call it, an anecdote, to use the expression in English. It used to be given over in Lubavitch. The Baal Shem Tov revealed into the world that every Yidden, every Yid can be an Oived Hashem. That it's possible that Yidden, notwithstanding their level in study of Torah or their level in knowledge of the background of Yiddishkeit, that every Yid can be a Oived, how to call it, a server of Hashem. And the Alter Rebbe revealed how to be an Oived Hashem. The Alter Rebbe revealed how that's to be done. It's like a general atzmizdike nakuda, and then it's like a inifim opening up the nakuda in the nakuda means a dot. Opening up the dot into its detail. For example, we find that according to the tradition in Lubavitch, the Baal Shem Tov, he's the in what we call Sfiras HaKeser. And in Keser Gufa, he's like Pnimius HaKeser. He's like, the Magid is what's called Arik, or the Chitenius HaKeser. He's also Shait HaKeser. And then the Alter Rebbe is Chochmah. So Chochmah is also an Akuda. The truth is that Chochmah is also a dot. But the difference is that in Keser, it's an Akuda how you're going up and losing your whole Matthias in Elikus. Like it's an upward, is butlers, that everything just becomes an Akuda. And that's what's written in the Zohar Kodesh. When you get to Malchus, for example, that the Sfiras HaMalchus, like Gabi Keser, is in the same way, that it goes up and loses. As Iris Garmei, it literally squeezes its whole Matthias into one Nakuda, like Gabi, the Ashpah, Pnimius of Keser into Malchus. However, the Nakuda from Chochmah is the beginning of a whole new opening up. It's the beginning of a whole new world. But that's the union of a Nakuda which gives forth details. And it opens up into details, and those details, they become a hasoga, what's called a grasp by the mensch. And that's only the Aveda, the mensch himself, that's only what he's doing. But Ila, the union from Chochmah, is still shy to what he's been given, Milmaila, but he's been given Milmaila in a way of, how do you call it, from upwards downwards, in a way that's going to open up into details. And who opened it up into details? That's the Mittler Rebbe. Yeah, the Mittler Rebbe, he brought it out into details, and the Tzemach Tzedek, he's the Inyan from Das, but that's the Inyan from Tiferet. But we'll soon mention that as we go along. It follows that the Baal Shem Tov revealed an Nakuda Atzmiyas, that he called an essential Nakuda that's there in every Yid. But they call it every Yid's got a divine soul, and every Yid's got inside that divine soul. He's got the nitzot, that he got the spark of divinity. From over in Tanya Perek Yud Ches, every Yid's got inside the nitzot, that he call it the spirit, the spark of divinity. The Baal Shem Tov said that because that's the case, then you can look at every Yid as a possible and potential Oved Hashem. And you mustn't look at him as if he's a bit more simple than the Talmud Chacham, for example. You mustn't look at him as a less value because he doesn't know so much Torah. And that was the whole meaning of the Kiruv, the tremendous bringing closer on the part of the Baal Shem Tov, all the so-called simple Yidden, because the Baal Shem Tov looked at the simple Yidden. He saw the inner divine spark in every Yid, and in that there's no difference between the big Talmud Chacham and the simple, whatever he may be. He may be a carpenter or a tailor or a sweep, that he calls a street sweeper, it could possibly be, but he's the same, and the Etzem Nakuda is the same there in every Yid. Since he has that essential Nakuda, he can be an Oved Hashem. It could be that because of certain factors in his life, he didn't make it the way the Talmud Chacham did. But mitzat the divine spark in them, they both have the same, as it were, chances, the same possibilities they have. However, that remained in a possibilities. How do you call it? It's like in a form of how the Sfiras HaKeser is still withdrawn and it's still moved down from all the other Teisha Sfiras or Eser Sfiras. It depends how you count the Keser, whether you count as one of the Eser or whether it's something moved out completely. However, the Alter Rebbe, he's another type of dot. He's a Nakuda which is going the other direction, and it's showing how it can be done. And therefore, the Alter Rebbe was the opening of the Nakuda of the Baal Shem Tov, albeit still in a very Nakuda-dik fashion, but it was beginning, Chok Mabina V'das, the whole shit of Chabad began in such a way that it was indicating how every Yid can be a Oved Hashem. The connection of Chabad with the Baal Shem Tov is that the Indian from Chabad is the development, Bapoyel, of how to do what the Baal Shem Tov said every Yid can do. And every Yid is worthy of doing it. And that's what the Baal Shem Tov revealed. And in that regard, you must value every Yid in a new way and an equal way. The Alter Rebbe indicated how it's going to be done. And his son, the Mittler Rebbe, brought it out into tremendous detail. What does it mean that every Yid can serve the Eibusher? And Mamira Nimtzalaf, he said that being a grandson, that the Alter Rebbe considered himself a grandson, that the Baal Shem Tov was just like a grandson is an essential continuation. He's not just a follower, he's not just a banner carrier, he's not just even a student. Yeah? He's an essential part of the whole development of, if he's a good Ta'inical, then how do you do it? He tries to develop what his Zayda has given him, and he tries to bring it out more into Poyel and into action. But that's the Inif in the Alter Rebbe. The whole Shitta of Lubavitch is reality of what you can really do. Therefore, the whole Indian of Lubavitch is that you can't stay a potential. You have to be how do you call it, a real. It's got to be something papoya. And therefore we see that when the Rebbe took on the Nasiyas, when the Rebbe accepted the leadership, and the Rebbe said, he said that he's not refusing to help. He's ready to help. But the Indian of Chabad is that everybody got to do his own particular Veda. And therefore the Rebbe, even with all that the Rebbe gave us, and the Rebbe is still giving us, and the Rebbe is going to lead us all to Mashiach, and he is Mashiach, take of me out Mamish. Nonetheless, it's all in the form of a huge assistance. Of a lapur, you got to do it yourself. When it comes to the actual inyanim, it's got to be your inyan. That's the whole inyan of Chabad. The nakuda of the Baal Shem Tov, is like we said out of the nakuda, the dot is in a way of pure aliyah, how do you call it, elevation and withdrawal into the Ein Sof. And the nakuda of Chokhmah is the inyan of Yerida from the Ein Sof into the Shtalshalit. In the same way, there's a way of relating to the whole inyan from Pnimis HaTorah. And to a certain extent, I don't want to say anything, maybe that's the difference between the Polish Chassidus and the Lubavitch Chassidus, that the inyan from there's a way of relating to all the good things that Lubavitch gives you, is that you like the big time, you like the usage of terminology and the big time, and you're caught up in the, what you might call the glamour of talking about Pnimis HaTorah, but therefore you go up, and you become a bit out of things, and you become a very enlightened, what do you call it, withdrawn or intellectual type. And that's not the kavanah. That's not the kavanah. The kavanah is to take the nasinus koyach and the efshoriyas that's there, mitzad the nakuda of keser, and to bring it down into the nakuda of chokhmah, and to get cracking, and to bring it into further detail and into further and further and further until your whole being becomes governed by what you learn. And the whole inyan of learning Chassidus is not just a basking in the sun of beautiful concepts, but it's an inyan of poyel, avoda, mamish, propel mamish, changing the world. And each Nasi brought about a different emphasis, how that was to be done, what was the way of operation of that particular generation in the world. And our Nasi and our Rebbe, he says that the inyan is Mashiach, that the way to bring everything into realization, which it means that if you don't have a chayas in Mashiach, and you're not working in Mashiach, in bringing the whole inyan into activity and into poil, and rashing about Mashiach, and talking with people about Mashiach, then you're not really understanding Chassidus right. You haven't really got the right point, because the pshat in Chassidus is according to the Rebbe of each generation. The real purpose of every inyan of Chassidus is even the Chassidus of the Rebbeim that came before him. It gains a new way of expression and a new way of coming into reality through the Nasi of that particular generation. Since the Rebbe revealed to us that that's the way, through being busy with the Rebbe's inyan, that's how you get into the real Habona and to the real understanding and the real appreciation. You're not going to just be a gishmach, a hermit, you're just going to sort of be up there with all the beautiful Chabadska things and maybe, have, very posh talis and very this and very that, but that's about all it is. Yeah, the inyan is everything has to come down from a nakuda into details, and those details have to express themselves in the world, b'poel mamish, and it's got to be a world the way the Nasi at that particular time, he understood the world. And then you understand the real pshat in Pnimis HaTorah. Otherwise, you're just learning concept. And anybody who's got a good cook can learn concept. But to learn Chassidus, and to learn what the idea of Chassidus really implies, you've got to go through the Nasi. You've got to go through him, and then you come to Pnimis HaTorah. If you go through him into Pnimis HaTorah, then you understand what you're talking about. We see that every hesitation on the part of anybody, it doesn't matter who it is, when they get to the message of Mashiach, just brings bilbul. It just causes endless confusion. But when people get real about the inyan of Mashiach and they talk with others about Mashiach, people turn on, and then people get really excited and things begin to happen. Of a dafki, because in our present moment that we live in right now, there's certain people who think that maybe they've also got a nakuda. They don't need the nakuda of the Nasi to open up. Look what the Rahman and Sam we're holding by. Look at the Matthias. It's all because in a very delicate way, everything is drifting from the real understanding of what is the emes ha'hirah of Torah. And therefore you got people with beards and with bekitches and everything are saying heper, the emes ha'kavanah, because they're not going through the emes ha'nosi. And therefore even there, havana, when they get to inyonim in Torah, is muteis. And they call it mistaken. It's mavubah. And there was even in Kiryat Shmona, there fell bombs and because people are not going through the Nasi in order to understand what this Torah instructed. If you go through the Nasi, and you go through his instruction, then you get the emes pshat. Then you know what is the pshat in a maimah, you know what is the pshat in a sikha. Come over, what Hashem tells you have to have siyata d'shmaya, and then you know where you go. You're going on a way that's helping and promoting the betterment and the gashmis, uberuchnias, and beruchnias of everybody. But if chalila, you think, oh, you know, the Rebbe was a little bit, you know, he sort of overdone a bit, wasn't he? And it was all a bit exaggerated. Take it easy, calm down. And as a matter of fact, I spoke with a fellow last night. I don't want to mention any names. I won't mention who is. Quite a relatively well-known person. And he says that he's a Baal Tshuva. He's originally a Baal Tshuva. And he said when he came into Chabad, he was full of enthusiasm about Mashiach and about other things. And he said that what's happening is he feels in his own being that people are gradually toning him down a bit. And he said he feels that because of that, he's losing control over the main issues of his life. You know, there's different things, I don't want to mention what he told me, it's his own private business. But he feels that things are slipping. And it's a very amazing point. It's a very sobering point, but it's a very amazing one, that you've got to go through the Nasi. If you go through the Nasi, then you come to the emes. You've got to go through, but you have to listen only to what the Nasi said. And when anybody says to you, listen, the Rebbe said but he didn't really mean it, or he didn't mean all that, but be very careful, run away 50 meters from such a statement. Now that's Rahman in the Klan. That's the secret of all the bilbulim. That is the shortage of all the bilbulim. All the bilbulim come. Whatever the Rebbe said, he meant the touchless apshita. He meant it absolutely, simply, exactly as he said it. Li shinoi, klal. Afilu atar. There's no shinoi. All the instructions for the Gerel and Moshiach, they're all real. And if we get involved in them, then we're going to understand what the Rebbe meant in a Maimah, we're going to understand what he meant in a Sikha, we're going to understand what the Rebbe Rashab meant. We're going to understand what the Rebbe Tzemach Tzedek meant. But because we don't go through that hero, we don't have that highest, then we're sort of playing with concepts. We're playing with some old idea, you know, Chabad, Chokhmah bin Adar, Chabad. That's not Chabad. This doesn't Chabad. Dr. Chaim Yidden, and they was hoping that we should live with the genuine, you know, light and the genuine kavanah of everything, and smoothly we should go to Moshiach. But the situation is it's not good. If I remember the Rebbe said once, I was at a FARBRENGEN, I heard the Rebbe say it. He said that he's storming about Moshiach. He said, but he feels that it's eventually going to come a time when people will begin to storm about Mashiach because it's Pikuach Nefesh. They'll see that it's the only possible way to save a situation which is Mamish Pikuach. That's what the Rebbe said. He said there's going to come a time when they'll have to tumult because of Pikuach Nefesh. He wanted to tumult about Mashiach, but listen to Kavanah Elyon. And Rahman in Islam, we shouldn't become involved in a matter like that. But it appears to me that we're not very far from it. As I know, Hashem should help us that we all have a bit of ordinary Chokhmah bin Adar, simple understanding and simple seichel to appreciate what is the real, you know, I don't want to use words that force people. So you say the real Chabad is like forcing something. But to just understand our knowledge, to know what the kavanah of the Rebbe was, the only way is to learn the Sikhs, not to listen to anybody. Don't listen to anybody. Only learn the Sikhs, and particularly Mem Tes on and Mem Tes, Mem Tes, Nun Aleph, Nun Beis. Just learn all the Sikhs and draw your own conclusion. But don't listen to what people will tell. Hashem Shadal, Beis Hashem, take me out. We should meet up with the Rebbe and we should be with him and we should go, like the Rizal said to his Talmudim here in TZFAS. He said, let's go immediately to Yerushalayim. And all the Talmudim start saying, oh, when are we got to go home and tell the Rebbe to know something a hidden and a half? And so the Rizal went like and said, the biggest opportunity since the Rashbi to bring Mashiach was lost. Remember, we shouldn't be like that, Koli. We have to know the right way to react to what the Rebbe said. Remember, Hashem should all be the Chesed of Barachamim, and be in a Rebbe, and Simcha B'tul Levov.
Amen.
And Be'ez Hashem, always together, always sitting at the great Farbrengen, taking the Mamish Imro, the Borashem. And then there will be Tkab B'Shefer Godel. And then go of Sanandra Tekiya Shefer.
Amen.
Chaim.
Chaim.